Hello, everybody, and welcome to Washington County's 2023 celebration of United Nations World Day of Social Justice. My name is Eric Laprete. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Sustainability Education Coordinator within the Office of Sustainability here at Washington County. This is an annual celebration that our office puts on every single year to shine a light on the intersection of sustainability, where we all work in, and social justice. Previous year's themes have included diversity and environmental careers, the link between food equity and food access, and making equity part of your job. And as you are all aware, because you are here today, this year's theme is climate justice for generations, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. As you can also see on the screen, we have a wonderful set of guest speakers, leaders from 3 different community organizations within Washington County, 350 Washington County, Centro and Sunset High School. I will be introducing all of them individually in a minute. I'm going to share my screen to just do some really quick introductions so that we can kind of all be on the same page about what we're doing today. So as you know, this is called Climate Justice for Generations, and it is a celebration of the United Nations World Day of Social Justice. The UN World Day of Social Justice started back in 2007 and is celebrated on February 20th of each year. Its mission is to contribute to the efforts that countries are already putting forward around the world to do things like eliminate poverty, promote decent work and wages, gender equity, general well-being, and of course, justice for all. Washington County will do generally a spin on whatever the theme of the year happens to be. They put the theme out usually like a week or 2 before the event, and that obviously is not enough time for us to prepare. So we pick a theme that is relevant to sort of a regional conversation, a national conversation, work that might be happening at Washington County. And we chose climate justice because it is at the forefront of our minds right now. Washington County recognizes that climate change does not impact everyone equally, and that low income, low wealth, and communities of color are especially vulnerable, are bearing disproportionate burden of climate change, despite the fact that they are contributing the least to the problem. Washington County also recognizes that youth are inheriting an increasingly uncertain world, and that the actions that we are taking today are going to have far-reaching effects for generations to come. This is our agenda for today. In a minute, I'm going to pass the mic on over to my colleague from Sustainability to give some opening remarks. We're then going to have 15-minute presentations from each of our 3 guest organizations, which again are 350 Washington County, Centro and Sunset High School Climate Change Club. That's going to run until about 4:30. And then for most of the remainder of our time today, we're going to be doing a Q&A and panel discussion where y'all will have the opportunity to ask questions of our guest speakers, and we'll just have a nice conversation about climate justice and the work that's happening in our community. We'll then finish it out with some closing remarks. So with that, I would like to introduce my colleague from the Office of Sustainability, Carlina Martins. Carlina is our sustainability specialist and is basically our go-to person for all things data and sustainability here at the county. She is constantly elbows deep in Excel sheets, tracking our utility bills, seeing how much we're spending and paying for things like energy consumption and our waste and recycling output. And she's also an instrumental part of all of our employee engagement activities. So Carlina, take it away.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen so you can see. So I'm Carlina Martins. I use she, her pronouns. And as Eric said, I work with the Office of Sustainability for Washington County. And talking about climate change, I know it can be very overwhelming because usually it's not, we don't bring the most positive news. And it can make some people feel hopeless. I do feel like that sometimes, so I understand. And because of that, when some people talk about climate change, there is a debate whether they should tell it like it is or focus on a more positive message, so we don't leave people feeling, overwhelmed and hopeless. But I believe that we can only find solutions when we understand the problems and we have the whole picture. I also believe that when people are given the right information, they will make better choices. And that's why today I'm going to talk about climate change as it is, because there is a lot to unfold in this conversation. And when we think about climate change, or the way climate change has been historically framed, it looks at the science and how changing climates and the conditions related to that impact us. And if you don't know much about climate change, you may have experienced or seen on the news about snowstorms, the heat wave, wildfires, flooding in areas where we didn't see it happening before, windstorms, decline in the salmon population in the Pacific Northwest because our fresh water is getting warmer, and many other extreme weather events. And even new terms have been created in our vocabulary. For instance, fire season. This has been something very recent that we have been talking about. Maybe in the last 5 years, we have been talking about fire season every year, and we may continue to talk about it. And we know that increasing greenhouse gas emissions from human activity act like a blanket wrapped around the earth, trapping the sun's heat and raising the temperatures. What the climate conversations have not done well, or maybe not done a good job at all, is to talk about disproportionality. We need to look at climate change with the human rights lenses. So there are two questions that we need to reflect on. Who is contributing to the problem, and who is being impacted by climate change? So who is contributing to the problem? We know that generating electricity and heat by burning fossil fuels such as coal and gas causes a large chunk of global emissions. Manufacturing and industry produce emissions, mostly from burning fossil fuels to produce energy for making things like cement, iron, steel, electronics, plastics, clothes, and other goods. Your home and use of power, how you move around, what you eat, and how much you throw away. All these things, they contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. The consumption of goods such as clothing, electronics, plastics that you bought from those industries, they also contribute to emissions. However, that's the important point about this conversation. People don't contribute equally to climate change. Some contribute more than others. And according to the United Nations, the wealthiest bear the greatest responsibility. The richest 1% of the global population combined account for more greenhouse gas emissions than the poorest 50%. And then when we ask who is being impacted, climate change impacts everyone, but not equally. Underserved communities are suffering the impacts of climate change more than others. And they are the ones who have contributed the least to this problem. Equity needs to be centralized in the conversation about climate change. And we also need to acknowledge that there are people that have different cultural relationships with the environment. And here's an example to understand this disproportionality. If we think about low-income communities, people tend to live, they usually will live in smaller spaces because they cannot afford, those big houses. And some families, they share the space. So they have more people living in the same space. And low-income communities, they may be more, we know that they usually are renters. And if we think about how they prepare for the weather, So they are the ones who have more barriers to afford improvements in their houses to prepare for the weather, whether it is for the summer or there is snow. You think about adding an air conditioning to the home. Not everyone can afford this, and it can be even more difficult for low-income communities. And even when they add an AC unit for their homes, they may not be able to afford to pay for the electricity bill, which is going to be higher once they install the AC unit. The same thing about the weatherization of the home. If the person is a renter, they may not be able to make a lot of changes in the home. And if they are a homeowner, they may not be able to afford those changes either. And when we think about how low-income communities get around, the main users of transit are low-income communities. They rely more on public transportation to get around. So when we have heat waves, snowstorms, they will face more difficulties to go to school, to go to work. They are the ones who, even though are contributing less to climate change, they are the ones who are suffering more with the impacts of climate change. And in this case, where they rely on transit to get around, they may miss a day of work, a day of school, and they cannot really afford to miss a day of work. They cannot afford to miss a day at school. They don't have the privilege to make those choices. So these are the inequalities that we see with climate change. And I know all this can be a little bit overwhelming, but I want you to know that you are not alone. And more importantly, you find there are a lot of people and community groups like the ones that you're going to hear from today, that they are building movements for climate justice. And we need everyone in this game. We need to ensure that the voices of those who are traditionally not heard from are central to climate conversations, and that their stories are told, because we should leave no one behind when we think about climate change. And here is the optimistic message, because I know I said a lot of things that may give the sense of, hopeless or it's overwhelming. Just to see people interested in learning about climate change shows that we are making progress. And also, I want everyone to know that, yes, we are part of the problem, but there are ways to solve the problem, and we all, in smaller or larger scales, we all can be part of the solution. And that's a conversation that we want to have today. And I'll leave my contact information if anyone would like to follow up or have any discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. Virtual round of applause for Carolina. I know everybody in their rooms giving you a virtual round of applause. That was wonderful. I really appreciate how you set the tone, and we're really just real with us, right? That the problems are big and they're real. And in addition to that, we have the ability to do something about it. And that is exactly why we are holding this event and why we have invited our community partners here with us today to share about the things that they are doing. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our first set of guest speakers who are coming here from 350 Washington County. We have Debby Garman, who retired in 2015, looked around after a too busy career in books, publishing, and nonprofit work, and saw a world in climate and environmental crisis. A longtime gardener and a beekeeper, she felt the best way to invest in hope was to take action in the ways she could. She founded 350 Washington County in 2016 and hopes that some difference has been made. She invites all of you to hop into climate action as you can as well. Also with Debby is Jonathan Clark. Jonathan has a master's degree in electrical engineering from Notre Dame, When he's not working on climate activism, you can generally find him gardening or working on home improvement projects. Debbie and Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Washington County. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting us today. I think I get to, Jonathan, do you want to say a thing?
No, go ahead, Debbie.
All right. I think I'm really grateful for Carolina's superb overview of climate crisis and climate justice. I completely agree that the best information offers us human beings the best choices. So it's really important in this day and age to get the facts right so we can make the best decisions. So why 350? This is a question on the street every day. I decided to found a 350.org local group when I jumped into climate action because resources were available. It's an international group of grassroots activists. Portland has a very active chapter, and it made sense to me to bring the kind of grassroots action that 350 does into our Washington County community. However, 350 from the get-go was an aspirational name. Back in 2007, when the international group was first founded, the 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide, which is the safe upper limit of carbon particulate matter to avoid climate tipping points, was already in the rearview mirror. So 350 number is aspirational. We hover somewhere in the 421 parts per million and sometimes above. In this day and age, it's cyclical and seasonal, depending on whether trees have leaves or whether leaves are falling and different aspects all the way around the world. But anyway, that's where 350 comes from. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So we're doing questions later, right? Okay, thank you so much. So a couple of other folks and I founded 350 Washington County in May 2016. We have worked on public education, including holding a school board candidate forum in our first year. We've delivered 3 years of quarterly free movies on climate impacts, climate justice, and climate solutions. We have monthly meetings on second Tuesdays. We're continuing to do them virtually on Zoom now because it reduces our carbon footprint to not have to drive to meet in a church somewhere. So that's the game plan. The hand that COVID handed us, sometimes there's been a silver lining. And we had 2 excellent rounds of panel conversations with partnered with Bag and Baggage Theater locally in Hillsborough here. We've had some excellent opportunities for advocacy with the Hillsborough Home Energy Score Initiative, which is a great package for low-income folks to explore who are interested in home ownership. We've done electric vehicle promotion at parades and at the Tuesday market, 4th of July and St. Patrick's Day parades. And we also work constantly to communicate, comment, provide testimony to our electeds at various levels where they carry out their jobs. In terms of public activism, our highlight was participation in an international global strike with large events in Hillsborough and Forest Grove on the Pacific campus, Pacific University campus in September 2019. We put on a COVID shoe strike, which was a way to be present without being present to strike for climate. We have constructed a pollinator garden at Bagley Park in Hillsborough, and we have ongoing monthly sign wavings for climate and climate justice on second Saturdays, and you could join us. Next slide, please. So advocacy is all kinds of ways of taking action, and our group, we look for opportunities wherever we may find them. Sometimes it's sending emails, sometimes it's showing up and having conversations in public. Most of our elected officials have local coffee chats. Our senators and our representatives certainly do. And there's a frequent round of public invited work sessions and town halls and whatnot, and every opportunity that we have to bring climate forward, climate justice forward, what are you doing for us on these issues, we will make an effort to show up. And we've had some success in sending op-eds to newspapers on topics as well. Next slide, please. Here's some shots from our climate strike in 2019. I think my favorite guest speaker was Sergio Garcia Cruz, who I think Mariana was there as well, lending a hand. Yes, his words were so amazing about his experience of growing up on a planet that was more wholesome, and his sorrow that the planet that we are unfortunately turning forward is less auspicious, and we have to maintain hope. We have to do every bit that we can to reverse that tide. Next slide, please. So our ongoing projects, we are getting out in support of clean air and clean water. One of those climate action nights at Bag and Baggage was all about trees and trees in our local urban landscapes, and the necessity to preserve trees and improve our shade canopies, because these excessive heat events are just going to keep coming our way summer after summer. We've had educational discussions on natural climate solutions. We have great forests in Washington County that we need to preserve, and they can do a great job of carbon mitigation for us. We've explored regenerative agriculture. We've got some amazing local farmers who are doing fabulous things. I didn't know that some plants, if maintained properly, have roots that can store just a ton of carbon. They can go down 5 or 6 feet and park that carbon just like tree roots do. And we're always advocating for all electric buildings, because those are the less polluting, way more polluting than the buildings that we have currently. So those are some shots of our pollinator garden planting. Next slide, please. Okay, turning it over to Jonathan.
Great, thanks, Debbie. Yeah, so I joined 350 just a few months ago. I met Debbie at one of the coffees that our representative Nathan Souza was having at Insomnia, and it's a great way to support local business as well. So a little bit about me. Eric mentioned that I have a background in electrical engineering, and so I like to look at these problems with that point of view to try to find solutions. I've been concerned about the environment and environmental sustainability since childhood. That was ingrained in me. I can remember going to school and talking about these things, and it's something that I've cared about all my life. I've been fortunate enough to buy my own home, and I was able to add solar panels to my house in 2019. Just this last year, I installed better insulating windows and also added a heat pump, so to reduce having to use natural gas. But along the way, I realized that even when I'm doing the right things, that the world is still burning, and I need to be doing everything I can to prevent the worst effects of climate change. So I began re-engaging in community activism. During COVID, I started reaching out to my then representative at the time, Janine Solman, and now she's our state senator. And then again, I met Debbie a few months ago. Next slide, please. So again, the point of this activist group is to prevent, the 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, which we're estimated to reach around 2030. That's just 7 years away. A lot of the things that politicians are talking about right now, they have goals, to 2035, 2050, and we need to be working on accelerating those plans. We need to be thinking about this in a holistic way. There's sustainable electricity, which Oregon is already on the way for this. But again, we need to be accelerating. There's the House Bill 2021 to get to 100% green energy, and actually PG is looking to meet and pass those goals by 2035. we need to be looking at getting a more robust and resilient smart grid, a distributed grid that's, again, equitable, fair, safer for everyone, so that if something goes out someplace, then other people don't get disrupted and we can keep our electricity going. We need to be looking into large-scale power storage solutions, and this is what's going to allow us to have more solar and wind and things that generate electricity that aren't dependable 24/7. By having these battery backups, we can dramatically reduce our need for fossil fuels. And we need to be looking into more passive housing and buildings, so that we are heating our buildings and heating and cooling needs are reduced, so we don't have to use as much electricity. Most of us know about the push for electric vehicles, and that's extremely important. There's still an environmental impact on that, but it's far less than the current combustible vehicles that we have right now. And of course, just ending coal, oil, and natural gas mining as soon as possible. These industries are there because they're big and they're powerful, and we need to be attacking those sources head on, making sure that they are held accountable, and that they're not then, instead of polluting in our atmosphere, transitioning to things like plastic. Next slide, please. Other sustainability goals include, which was mentioned by Carolina, was greener concrete and steel solutions. These are technologies that are in the makings, but unless we have incentives to transition of these, it's not going to happen. Promoting sustainable agriculture. Most of our fertilizers are based off of petrochemicals, fossil fuels, and we need to be switching those processes over as soon as possible. Preventing natural gas companies from transitioning to plastic, I mentioned that before, and also thinking about our waste and wastewater management, getting to a fully circular economy. Next slide, please. And so we would love to have you join us. Again, we meet every second Tuesday at 6:30 on Zoom. It's really handy. It's hopefully a good time of day for people, and again, you don't have to leave your house. You can just join us there, and it's a great way to have build your community and people who are like-minded and want to get involved. And feel free, there's also a link here, and we'll put this in the chat. The Building Resilience Action is a thing that you could do right now. It's something that's on one of the bills that is going through the 2023 session, and a great way to have an immediate impact on how buildings are, the code for buildings, and to make them more climate resilient. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Eric.
All right, virtual round of applause for Debbie and Jonathan. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Loved learning more about your group. I would love to introduce our next guest speaker from Centro Cultural. Please welcome Mariana Valenzuela. Mariana was born in La Serena, Chile, and has lived in the state of Oregon since 2001. She received her MBA from Pacific University and a BA in Latin American Studies and MA in Literature from New Mexico State University. Her professional career includes 27 years of teaching experience at institutions of higher education, including Idaho State University, Portland Community College, and Pacific University. In addition, Ms. Valenzuela holds IAP2 certifications on foundations, techniques, and planning for effective public participation. Currently, she holds the position of Director of Community Partnerships and Advocacy at Centro Cultural, where she has worked on civic engagement projects and community outreach since August of 2018. Ms. Valenzuela is a member of the Latino Policy Council and is a city councilor for the city of Forest Grove. Focus of her work is the community. Throughout her years at Centro Cultural, Ms. Valenzuela has established connections with other organizations and institutions to provide opportunities for leadership development and empowerment of community members, including Latino youth and adults. Ms. Valenzuela supervises the Master Recycler certification and climate justice leadership programs. She is known by Centro Cultural clients as a trustworthy advocate who listens and brings the voice of the community to the decision-making table. Mariana, welcome to Washington County. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate this opportunity so much. Debbie, it's great to see you again. Jonathan, I have a lot of faith in your generation. So in Carolina, yes, there's some bad news, but I also think that we should feel hopeful because there are things that we can certainly do. But I'm here to share with you what my organization is about. And we have done a lot of things that we are immensely proud of, but that could not be done without the help of partners. All right, friends, amigos. So Centro Cultural had its 50th birthday last year. And we're immensely proud of the work that has been done. I don't know if many of you know the story of Centro Cultural, but it was founded by 12 immigrant families that you can see here, this portrait of these families, immigrant from Mexico. And the place where they used to gather, that's where Centro Cultural is today. They wanted to give a place, a safe place for new immigrants that were coming to work in the agricultural industry. As you may know, the Latino, the Mexican immigrants are really the ones that kept that machine going, the agriculture, and developed all these fields that are located around this area in Cornelius and Forest Grove. And just to go a little bit further than that, you just think about who's picking harvesting the potatoes in Idaho, the citrus in Florida, the grapes in California, the chili in New Mexico, the apples in Washington. You think, who are the people that are doing that labor to bring food to us, to our table. So these families, these 12 families, wanted to give a space to welcome these new immigrants so they could have something a little bit like home here in the city of Cornelius. Our mission, a home for Latino cultures, that's what Centro Cultural is. We serve the needs of our diverse community by promoting personal growth and empowerment. So our commitment to the community to provide pathways to prosperity, meet people where they are, to be able to, with them, help them create the life they want to live. A whole community. I have memories because the pandemic hit all of us very hard, but as Debbie said, and I really like that, not driving, for example, is something that really did benefit the environment. Actually, in Hawaii, what they were saying, Mother Earth is just taking care of itself. As tragic and devastating as COVID-19 was, so many people were lost, a lot of heartache, jobs were lost, homelessness grew. But in other cultures, that's what they believed, that the earth was taking care of itself. Empowering leaders, the youth or adults that had not had the opportunity before to be able to participate, as Carolina was saying before. And why does that happen? Because there are certain barriers to civic participation that I will talk about in a little bit. So our pillars, our focus areas, we call them pillars, are civic engagement and leadership, community health and wellness, prosperity, prosperidad, economic development, youth development, and STEM program for our kids. Oops. And our COVID-19 response, which was very, very big. I mean, just to give you an idea, when I started to work at Centro in 2018, there were 20 of us. 20 of us. We used to get together for lunch. We all fit at the table, just one table. Now we're over 80. And that has happened because we've had to respond to the demands of this pandemic, all the problems that it caused. And we had a great team, a lot of youth, a lot of millennials and next gen working with us to make things happen. So here you have some of the accomplishments. 8,500 plus food boxes were distributed that year. And this required a lot of people wearing masks, filling boxes of food to be delivered to the fields where agricultural workers lived with their families. And we were able to get volunteers in their cars, trucks, however we could to deliver this food to the fields. And also to be able to help businesses stay afloat. And that's something that Centro de Prosperidad, our development, business development center, was able to accomplish. Not only that, but also in May of 2021, we were able to we received a grant from the Oregon Community Foundation to be able to purchase this hotel and make it into a shelter, Casa Amparo, House of Refuge. And we are serving families now. This is a transitional home, mostly for families, women and children. But we don't turn anyone away. And we've been able to secure housing, more permanent housing for many, many families. Also, Centro Mercado. For Centro Mercado, here you see what it will look like once we're done with it. But what happens when you have lines and lines of people that need food because their hours were cut, they lost their job, they need to pay rent, and they're suffering because of a result of the pandemic? We just ran out of space to be able to do this. So we were able to find a commercial center where we could have this grocery store where people can come in and instead of being handed a box of food, you can choose the things that you need for your family, which is a more dignified way. We call it the Centro way of doing things. And we are very, very proud of that, that accomplishment. So we went from serving 6,800 boxes to 13 in 2001. And this is all based on the number of visits that we had. But this is a work that we're immensely proud of. So this is my team, community engagement team. Here is Sergio Garcia Cruz that you mentioned, Debby. And I was there that day to help him translate. And I really liked what I was translating. It was really, really great. Yes, he's an amazing, amazing person. And then there's me and Janet Silva Villanueva. She's a student. She graduated already with a psychology degree. She's a project coordinator. And Alexander Ibarra, who is now working as a contractor because he moved to California to make his movie, which is actually related to gentrification. So again, like I said before, Jonathan, I have a lot of faith in your generation because he could be making a movie about anything, but he decided to focus on something that is a big issue and that needs a solution. So our core, for our code of ethics here, for our community engagement, our core values is the voice of those who would be impacted must be part of the decision-making process. And this is something that Carolina mentioned as well. People have been marginalized. How do they speak up? That's what we do. That is my job at Centro Cultural, to bring that voice to the decision-making process. Their opinion and concerns will be taken into account. But for this to happen, you also have to make the decision makers accountable. And what I wanted to mention here is we talk about the impact of climate change. As a child in my home country in Chile, I remember the rivers, how beautiful they were. We would go out there, have picnics with my entire family, all my extended family. Now there's nothing. And that is the consequence of the mining industry. that has poisoned our waters, has dried up our rivers, and has made our people sick. And no one is accountable for that. So I thought that happens in my country, in Chile. 3 years ago, I go to New Mexico, where I went to school. And we are driving, and there's no river anymore. This river, I remember it being very, very wide, the Rio Grande, when it goes through Mesilla Valley. They built a park there. They built a park on where the river used to be, a little park. And I just remember at that moment, the awareness when you see things like that. No, it doesn't only happen in Chile, but it has reached us. There was no river anymore. And that was very sad, because that was a very abundant river 20 years ago. Continue with the core values. All participants matter, and they must be part of the entire process from very beginning to the very end. Ensure that all participants understand the information and communicating to participants how their input affected the final decision or outcome. You cannot just invite people to talk and not have some results to deliver to them. So what are some of the obstacles of my community, the Latino community, to civic participation? Transportation, Carolina was talking about that as well. Transportation, that is a big issue for the community. Most people use public transportation, which is helping the environment, but they are the ones that have to stand in line. There are no shelters sometimes. There is a lot of investment in fixing roads, making them wider so more cars fit in there. Is that really helping the environment? Just trying to fit more cars in Highway 26 or TV Highway, when perhaps we could be putting more shelters, provide more safety, and people would be more motivated to use public transit, for example, instead of the investments going elsewhere. There is also a language barrier. Sometimes they have to work, so they cannot go and participate at a community conversation. They also have family, like we all do, that require attention, children that cannot be left alone. And many of them do not have access to technology like Wi-Fi and devices to be able to connect to Zoom. So how do we solve all these problems? Teamwork and partnerships. That's why I'm really grateful to be able to be here today, because working together, we can find the resources and help people break through those obstacles, break through those barriers, and be able to get to a better place. And here we have a picture of the first Master Recyclers cohort from Centro Cultural, which was the first time this certification program was offered in Spanish. And Sergio was part of that very first cohort. And that he has really made that count, because he's a human being totally committed to helping the environment. All right, so in terms of advocacy, 2 programs that I oversee is the Climate Justice Leadership Program for high school youth and the Master Recyclers. Though Sergio is the person in charge, he's the project manager for that program. And you can see us here. This is the graduation picture of the very first cohort. And I am so happy to announce that we are going to begin in April, cohort number 4. And this is going to be offered to our community in Spanish, delivered in Spanish. But I wanted to share with you what this group did, what Sergio did, and Ricardo Palazuelos, I believe he's in the audience today as well. What happened when the pandemic hit? We had programming, we had workshops scheduled, going virtual. How do you figure that out? How do you stream live something? They figured everything out. And they were able to deliver 115 virtual events, including workshops, interviews, everything related to the best practices of recycling, the environment, and even summer program for children, virtually. They were able to do that. And it did require a lot of hard work. Now, here is their report for 2022. They participated in 220 community events. This is their outreach number, the people they were able to reach. They participated in farmers market. They had a bulky waste disposal, 100 families were served, and they gathered 1 ton of waste. Over 1 ton of waste was gathered. And you go to see people where they are. And they went to a neighborhood and were able to help all these families that had this kind of waste that needed to be taken care of. Disposal of toxic waste, electronic and sharps. I say sharps because diabetes is very common in the Latino community. Not only here in the Latino community in the United States, but also throughout Latin America. For some reason, we're very prone to diabetes. So how do we get rid of those things? And Master Recyclers has been essential with the partnership of Washington County and Metro to be able to help the community with this. The My Climate Justice Leadership Program. The first cohort, 2019. So you know what happened in 2020. We were unable to recruit because students were not in school. We were not able to gather. So they found other things to do. We did deliver workshops virtually about the structure of government. Why was that important? Because then you know how you can go about telling people you need to do something about the climate. You need to do something to help us out. You need to know the structure of government, particularly your local government. But during that very first experience, that very first cohort, they learned about the rainwater conservation, pollinators workshop, kayaking, the toileting. That was very fun, but the purpose was to learn about the watershed and where our water comes from and the issues with water. Chehalam Ridge Nature Park, all the restoration efforts that were made, the habitats of beavers, for example, just to learn about all the stories and how it affects them today. The visit to Jackson Bottom Wetlands Reserve, to learn about birds, to learn about nature, just to have the opportunity to be there and appreciate it and make sense out of everything that nature has to offer. The Fernhill Water Treatment Plant, the Metro Paint Facility, and community event participations as well, where they sat there and were able to share what they had learned with the community. And here you see them building a barrel for rainwater, which is at Centro Cultural today. They also, during that year, 2020, they did a backyard habitat volunteer training. It was 8 hours of workshops online, virtual. They also painted La Placita, tables and chairs that for a project, so people could go and sit over there and have something to eat from the cards. And serving the community, they help fill up those boxes to be taken to the fields as well. And what I see here in this picture makes me very happy. All these kids are now in college. And these two girls right here actually are involved in pursuing science studies. So I'm immensely proud of what, of the outcome of these kids. So what is next for these kids? Volunteer work and internships with organizations that offer green jobs opportunities. The program has served the purpose of building a team of young leaders who appreciate the outdoors, care for our planet. So for our future, these are things we need to do to help our youth. And I'm going to share with you a video to share with you a visit to Chehalan Ridge from our seniors, our senior group, Edad de Oro, the Golden Age, from Centro Cultural. Can you all see it? Okay, so there are subtitles there.
Admiro la naturaleza, los árboles preciosos, diferentes clases de pinos, de árboles, y pues afortunadamente lo disfruto porque es mucha vegetación, algo que para el ser humano es importante, respirar el aire puro, el aire limpio, fresco, que nos ayuda para pues pensar positivamente, sentirnos relajados. Yo me siento relajada andando en el parque y disfruto todo lo que está hecho por el hombre y la naturaleza. Me encanta disfrutar. Siento mucha alegría, mirar para los lados, escuchar los pájaros, también la soledad. Me siento muy, me desestreso mucho andar por acá recibiendo estos aires. Y así que nos despejamos un rato con el aire, con el ruido de los pajaritos y ver los árboles que están bien, todo nos ayuda. Nos ayuda el ambiente que tenemos, nos despejamos malamente para seguir adelante. Por eso venimos aquí en estos parques que nos ayuda a pensar, a todo, para no seguir apachurrándonos. Y pues pocos latinos venimos por lo mismo no nos juntamos con los más grandes porque pues no sabemos inglés, pero sí nos gusta convivir. Nos gusta venir porque vemos caras de varios países, de que cómo vienen, y todo eso nos llena de alegría a todos nosotros.
Es muy importante que exploren la naturaleza de estos parques porque la naturaleza de estos parques es vida, es salud y bienestar para uno.
Bien, thank you so much for allowing me this time to share what we're doing, bringing people into nature. And also I wanted to use this video to kind of share with you a perspective of what the Latino community thinks of nature, how important it is to us, why we want green spaces, why we want clean water. And you know, this video allowed me to do that. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariana. That was beautiful and inspiring. It's so wonderful to hear about all the just truly wonderful things that you're doing over there at Centro Cultural. We're just so incredibly proud to be your partners in all of this. So with that, Mariana, if I could ask you to unshare your screen, and then I'm going to invite our final group of guest speakers today coming from Sunset High School and their Climate Change Club. First, we have Emily Yarvis. Emily is a senior at Sunset High School and is a co-president of the Climate Change Club. She's passionate about climate justice and reducing our community's environmental footprint. In her free time, she enjoys competing in triathlons, swimming, and hiking. Leah Gulik is also a senior at Sunset High School and is the other co-president of the Sunset High School Climate Change Club. She's passionate about protecting the earth and loves to hike, read, and listen to music in her free time. And then we have Natalie McWilliams. Natalie is a junior at Sunset High School and the secretary of the Climate Change Club. They are passionate about helping the planet and the people on it. Additionally, they do speech and debate, like to hang out with their dogs, love art, and also do some work with equity and conversations around race in their school district. So Sunset High School Climate Change Club, welcome to Washington County. Thanks so much for participating with us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, everybody can see this. Good.
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. I will have Natalie start.
Hi, we're Sunset High School's Climate Change Club.
So I'm Emily Yarvis, as Eric already introduced, and I am Sunset's Climate Change Club's co-president.
I'm Natalie McWilliams. I'm the Secretary of Climate Change Club at Sunset, and my pronouns are they, she.
And hi, I'm Leah. I'm also co-president of Sunset's Climate Change Club. My pronouns are she, her, and Emily and I are seniors, and Natalie is a junior at Sunset. So just to give you a brief overview of the club, we're affiliated with our school, and we're just a group of Sunset High School students who are really passionate about increasing sustainability in our community through lots of different events that we will tell you more about. So just to give you a brief overview of what we'll talk about. First, we're going to talk about what it means to us to be a youth amidst the climate crisis. Then we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing as a club. And then we'll talk a little bit about what adults can do to support youth, at least from what we've learned in our perspectives.
Okay, so what does it mean to be youth amongst the climate crises? So I'm Natalie, and my experience is that when I was little, during the summers, I used to play outside every day all summer long. And as I grew older, I noticed that the summer days got hotter. Some days we couldn't even go outside because of heat waves, poorer air quality, or even smoke in the air. I was upset that we couldn't play outside, and I would ask why this was happening. The response I got was climate change. In schools, we learned about climate change and how it was causing extreme weather, natural disasters, sea levels to rise, and so much more. This made me scared for our future and the future of the planet. I'm mixed race, and my grandmother is from an island called Okinawa. Climate change is no exception there. When the extreme weather changes that affects crops, it's not just affecting the economy, but it is also affecting the access to the traditional foods we eat. When there are floods and documents are lost, it is not just documents that are lost, but a part of our history. When I was little, I was told that sea levels rise due to climate change could cause some islands to go underwater, and this wouldn't just be a loss of land, but a loss of culture. Climate change is affecting not just my family, but every single person on planet Earth. This is a part of why climate change is so important to me. These impacts of climate change, however, seemed so big, I felt like I couldn't make a difference. We would hear about climate activists on the news, and I felt like that was an unattainable feat. The term activist seemed unachievable, and I felt like I was unqualified to be an activist. But then I learned that activist is not a special person. It is a concerned citizen of planet Earth who is working on making a difference to help people. And that I could do. So I try to help people and the planet, even if it seems like it's in small ways. Being youth in today's world of climate change is stressful. We were born into a world where climate change already existed as a problem, and we did not cause this problem. As if growing up wasn't hard enough, trying to figure out who you are, hormones changing, and school, adding climate change to this stresses makes it even harder. For many young people, it feels like helping the planet and fighting this global crisis is a responsibility and simply a civic duty that has been placed on our shoulders. When I asked my peers how climate change made them feel, the overwhelming response was sad, scared, and anxious. Teens that say they are scared for the future and the future of the planet. Climate anxiety is a real problem that faces especially teens in today's world. Climate change is exhausting and overwhelming. Youth say they feel burnt out and stressed. Growing up, our schools would give us a quick lesson on climate change and then swiftly change topics to something like math. mathematics where we would have an excess of papers and we would waste papers. This contradiction would be confusing, and when kids pointed it out, the teachers would sometimes just reply with an eyeball roll. This would add to the stress and anxiety that kids had regarding climate change. Our schools say that we're future ready and that they're preparing us for the future, but with climate change, we do not know what that future looks like and if that future exists. A lot of the teens are applying to colleges and thinking about post-high school plans. This is already a wildly stressful process, but with climate change adding to this level of uncertainty, it makes it exponentially harder. Climate change has become a part of our lives and a constant stress on the minds of everybody and especially youth in this crisis.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about what our club has been doing so far. These are some of our club's main projects that I'm going to talk about today. Just to run through them now: recycling drives, our youth climate summit, our policy work, and our club website. So the first main thing that we have been doing for quite a while now is our bi-monthly recycling drives. We put these on at Sunset High School every other month. And in doing so, we hope to encourage recycling within the community and make it easier for our community members to recycle. We accept EPS items, which is just hard to recycle items such as styrofoam, number 6 plastics. But we have also started to take some TerraCycle items in as our recycling drives have advanced. We first started back in 2020, and they've just continued to grow as over time. And so, yeah, by accepting these hard-to-use items like styrofoam and number 6 plastics, we make it a lot easier for community members to recycle, which in turn makes them want to recycle more, which has been really great. But also we save them a really long drive down to Gulik, and that overall reduces their environmental impact, because instead of having 20 people drive to Gulik, we just have one truck take all of their styrofoam and number 6 plastics down to Gulik. We've also started to utilize TerraCycle, which if you haven't heard of TerraCycle before, I'll put a link in the chat right now. They're a really great program that allows people in the community to easily recycle hard to recycle items that you might not know you can. Some of their common ones are contact lenses, hygiene packaging, writing instruments, Brita items. Those are all ones that we collect at our recycling drives. They also collect items such as like chip bags, which is kind of interesting, and just things that you never would have thought you could recycle. And so we utilize them as well to allow our community members to all come together to recycle. And our next drive is on March 18th. So if you guys have styrofoam packaging products stored away, or if you want to start storing those up, especially contact lenses, if you wear contact lenses, you can store those up and bring them to our drive. It runs from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Sunset High School on March 18th. And so, yeah, that's just one of the ways that we have been doing work as a group to get back to the community. So another big thing that our club has been working on is our Youth Climate Summit. We've been working with a couple of different organizations from throughout the Willamette Valley, all high schoolers, including Next Gen, which is a group at Jesuit, and the Sherwood High School Green Team, to organize and plan the summit. And we're really excited about it. It will take place on April 15th from 1 to 5 p.m. It's a kind of an Earth Day, a pre-Earth Day celebration, since we know a lot of people already have Earth Day plans. And the goals of our summit are just to bring youth together, to have important discussions about the environment, hear from people who work in environmental fields, get out in nature, but most importantly, touching on something Natalie brought up earlier, we're trying to inspire our youth. A lot of times they're weighed down with the school presentations that just kind of come and go, but we hope to give youth the actual ability to like create climate change within their communities through the summit, and give them a place where they can create solutions with other individuals, and just giving them the resources to do that is really, really important for our youth. Right now, we're in the stage of just advertising for our event. So if you have the resources to do that, if you know youth, we really encourage you to check out our website, which I'll put in the chat as well, and share the news. We want to get as many youth as possible to attend our summit, just so that they have access to resources and can get inspired. We're really excited about this opportunity. And if you want to get involved in our summit, we're also looking for individuals to speak at our summit, individuals to exhibit at our summit, meet with youth, and just get involved. Feel free to email us. We would be super, super excited if any of you wanted to join us, either to work within our summit or just to attend. It's a really great opportunity that we're hoping to get a lot of people to attend. So I will throw our website into the chat right now. Another one of our big projects that we have been working on is district policy. So as some of you may know, Portland Public School District recently passed a district policy that cut down on their environmental footprint. And as soon as we saw that, we wondered why Beaverton School District wasn't doing the same. And so this is a project that mainly Leah has been heading up, but she is leading a group within our club to work with the Beaverton School District's Energy and Resource Conservation Manager to establish a climate action policy within the district. Again, it's being modeled after the Portland Public Schools policy, and we're just trying to minimize the carbon emissions of our district. And this year we've had the opportunity to work with a member of the Beaverton School District's Energy and Resource Conservation to edit and add to this year's policy draft to hopefully get that instituted this year. So that's super exciting. And another project that we're working on. And finally, one of our more minor things is we have a club website, and on the website, we have information about our recycling drives, more info about the summit. I already put that in the chat so you can check that out. A contact form for questions, but one of the greatest resources on our website is our recycling resources section. And we have information about where you can recycle items that are both offered at our recycling drives, but also more importantly, those that aren't offered at our recycling drives. We can't offer everything, but we want to make it easier for people in our community to know where they can take those hard to recycle items. And that's what we hope to do with our website. So we have information for where you can take number 1 plastics, batteries, styrofoam, again, number 6 plastics, TerraCycle items, all that kind of stuff. And in doing so, we hope to increase our community's knowledge about recycling and the little things that they can do within their own households and environments to make the world a better place and just do their part for society.
I'll be talking about what adults in our community can do to support not just our club, but young people in general from what we've seen and experienced as people growing up amidst the climate change crisis. So next slide, please. Thank you. So we were talking and thinking about this question, and we identified 3 main things that adults can do to support youth. And that is involving young people in opportunities, supporting our voices, and educating us, because you guys are our teachers and our mentors. The first area, which is involving youth in opportunities, is including youth in the work that your organizations are doing. So whether that means offering job opportunities or internships or ways that we can volunteer for park cleanups or different ways to recycling events or any other events that environmental conservation groups are doing. These kind of invitations allow us to feel like we are making tangible action and we are a part of a conversation. And it tells us that there's like next steps that we can take as we grow up and as we enter these fields. Yeah, so next slide, please. Thank you. The next thing you can do is like support our voices. So, I mean, already doing that even today, which we are really grateful for by inviting us to this event, but offering your resources to schools or to young people in your life so that we know that there's people out there who care and who are with us in this. Advertising our events. So like maybe sending our summit flyers to youth in your life, or checking out the recycling drive, or supporting. There's the Youth Climate Strike organization that works downtown and is always looking for people to support them. Identifying the youth-led groups in your community and trying to elevate and give them a place at the table is something that we really appreciate and that makes us feel less alone in this. And then the final thing that you could do is educate us, because although we might know a lot from growing up in the world that's facing this crisis, we don't know everything, and we don't know what's already being done and what is working and what is not working, even though we're trying to figure out on our own. Learning from people who are working in conservation fields, who have historical and cultural knowledge that gives them background on sustainability, and being able to be taught methods of sustainability that we can use as we inherit positions. It's things that we really appreciate. So opportunities where you can educate us on the work you're doing and the work that we can do as we grow up is like presentations at schools or showing up at career fairs to let us know what career opportunities are available to us if we want to work in fields related to sustainability, or even chances to shadow at jobs or do things like internships. These are all different ways that you can help us get involved. I think a big part of this education part is it's amazing for us to learn and to become more capable as climate activists. But it also really just gives us hope, direction on what we can do and how we can support the work that's being done. Gives us hope and makes us feel like we're all in this together and there is a way forward. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation and for the invitation to come to this event. Our website is linked, and there's also a QR code. We really appreciate hearing from all these amazing presenters and getting a chance to give our little tidbit of our perspective on climate justice matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah, Natalie, and Emily, for coming here and for sharing your experiences. That is it's so wonderful. And for the audience, I've gotten to connect with Leah and Emily a couple of times before this. Now this is my first time meeting you, but the kids are all right. They are light years ahead of, I know, at least where I was in high school. That was less than 15 years ago. And I think, despite all the challenges and things that were presented, that we're in really good hands with these people. So just feel very fortunate that I've been able to share the space with you and with our friends from Centro and from 350 Washington County as well. So if I can ask you real quick to unshare your screen. Perfect. We're syncing up. We only have about 7 minutes left. The time has flown by. So I want to make sure we get to the audience questions in the chat. It's possible we might go over just a little bit answering them, but I do want to make sure we gave them credit for it. If you need to leave, it's been a pleasure seeing you. And presenters, let's head on to these questions. So the first one is from Ricardo, and it's for Debby. And he's wondering if you could explain the importance of atmospheric measurements. I think that was talking about measuring CO2.
I think the most useful way to address that is, if you remember in Carolina's slide about the coat going around the world, the more carbon dioxide particles that build up in that coat, the more intense our greenhouse effect is of warming the Earth's surface. I hope that helps. I'm not into all the scientific stuff, but basically that's what it amounts to.
it helps us know our progress, right? If things are getting worse, if things are getting better, we gotta measure it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Debbie. Next question is there anything the average citizen can do to push polluting industries toward climate action? It can seem impossible. I'd like to open that up to all of our members. Each of you come from a different perspective. So what do you think folks can do in the room to, to push polluting entities to stop contributing so much to climate change? Debbie.
I don't want to dominate, but the advocacy at the government policy level is, to my knowledge, the most effective way. If you change policies that force corporate business people to make different choices, that can be useful, and it's tough because the big guys have a lot of power and a lot of money.
I could say something as well. This is something that I think falls into everyday activism. Anytime you see something that you're concerned about, you can always email or phone your representatives, and we have many that we can do that, and they want to hear from us. They want to know what we're concerned about, and the more they hear from us on these topics, the more it will be in the forefront of their mind as they make decisions.
Yeah, and my advice to our youth here is prepare to run for office so you can actually be there and be the decision makers. All right, but always keep in mind your goal, because many people run on things and then they forget. Or once they get there, they realize how difficult it is to get it done. And it disappears, all those promises disappear. So get ready to lead.
I think they're already on the leadership trajectory, folks in this room.
Just to add to the conversation, I think a big part of climate action, climate justice is all about changing the mindset of people everywhere, just everywhere, because I think that the first step to defeating climate change is on a small level, is changing, like, when we think about going somewhere, what does our mind immediately go to for how we're going to get there? Because for a lot of us, that's cars, or single-use transportation. And that's just one example of how we can shift our mindsets in a greener direction, using public transportation, using bikes, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that changing the mindset within your own community, changing your own mindset, people are influenced by what you do. If you start biking to school, somebody else might start biking to school. If you start biking to work, somebody else might start biking to work. And now you've got a movement. So I think that in order to push polluting industries towards climate action, it starts at the ground level and changing the mindset of your communities, because when people, especially big power people, see smaller communities having big movements, eventually that's going to get pushed into the people that are working in their big companies, and that will eventually change their mindset as well. So I think it really does start on a small level.
So well said by everybody. That's such a complete answer. We know it, right? We know everything that we need to do. It's how can we take that step, right, to actually move from knowledge about what to do to action. That's awesome. We have another question in the chat. It says, awesome that these groups were able to come together through this opportunity. What are other ways you and similar groups collaborate with groups advancing climate justice regionally? So I know, Sunset, you talked a little bit about that, how you're working with some of the other schools, but how do some of you as from your organizations, how do you work with other orgs regionally to support climate justice?
It was a pleasure to partner with Centro for our climate strike action. And I think that I've been remiss in not stepping over there. I'll be checking in on you, Mariana.
Absolutely.
For us, it's an issue of volunteer resources and time. And I'm definitely in a mode of looking for more partnerships with the time and bandwidth that I have. I'm really grateful to be in the room with all these folks here today. So that's what I can say. The more partnerships you can build definitely the more power that you can bring to the issues that we need to confront.
Debbie wears a lot of hats and she's involved in multiple organizations, and it's good to remember that you don't have to just be in one. You don't have to just pick one. You can do so. Another one that we both participate in is the Climate Reality Project, and they work with legislators as well to get good proposals. So yeah, there's lots of ways that you can reach across to multiple groups just by participating.
And for me, OLCV, Oregon League of Conservation Voters.
And MCAT.
Yeah. There's a considerable siloing, and I think it would be really wonderful to break through that. I think networking is beginning to happen.
I agree with what Debbie just said. I think the networking and like the connection is starting to happen. We're a relatively new club at our school, so we're just starting to see this, but we got the amazing opportunity to participate in this group of regional conservation organizations that Eric was also invited to, called Tree for All. And that brought together just tons of different people who all work in environmental conservation. And that's one way where we've been able to start like making connections and see like how we can partner with Washington County for an upcoming recycling event, or how we can work with inviting more youth to our summit who we're not going to reach just at sunset. So Tree for All has been a fantastic opportunity to meet other organizations and see what work we can do together.
We just joined Tree for All as well. Yay, yay them. Are you connected with the Beaverton Climate Action Task Force?
I don't
We are
think
not.
Hey, have I got a deal for you?
All right.
Yeah, we would love to be.
I'll reach out.
Thank you. I think our email's in the chat somewhere. Also, just to add on about that, Tree for All has been, like really one of the greatest experiences of my life. That has been really, really awesome. I wrote a whole college essay on it. It was so insightful and really awesome to meet Eric and Mariana there. But I think another a really cool opportunity that we've had is through our recycling drives. We have met so many cool people at our recycling drives, so many different community members who have offered to help us. One of the reasons that we are able to do contact recycling is because of a community member, Christy, in our area, and she has been so supportive of us. We have also met people from Washington County. We met Ricardo at one of our recycling drives, and now he is going to come out on behalf of Washington County for Free Geek to do electronic collection in our area, which is super, super awesome. We're really excited about that. But yeah, we have just been able to meet like tons of really cool people. And so that's just one of the ways that we've been able to do outreach and connect with others. It's just doing our thing and meeting people. It's been great.
It's really important to be able to get out and meet people. That's the best way to do it. And COVID was a real damper, in my experience, to actually connect with other people. And it's just been in the past 3-4 months that I've been able to get out and meet people like Jonathan at constituent coffees for legislators. So thank goodness that we're being able to be a bit freer now to do that.
All right. Well, I want to be conscious of time. Mariana, did you have any partnerships or anything that you wanted to talk about with Centro?
Well, again, I'm just super grateful to be here and just thinking about everything that has been said. And I have here on my notes about, electric cars, solar panels. For many people, these things are not attainable. But I think, advocating for better public transportation conditions, including safety, I think that is important that we do that at some level. Here we are meeting in Zoom, and that's okay. It is a good thing if you're not out there driving. It is good, it's best for the environment. But many people do not have that option either, and they have to be there. And to put a shelter on a bus stop You have to have certain amount of people that use that shelter, that bus stop. It should not be that way. You know, even if it's just one person, the investment should be made. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Eric,
everybody
for
so
bringing us
much. I
together.
do, we got to wrap it up. It's 5:04. But I just want to say one more huge thank you to all of our participants today. Big round, warm round of virtual applause. Also, thank you to my colleague Carolina Martins here from the Office of Sustainability, who put a lot of work into this presentation as well. I just really appreciate all of you for being here. So thank you to all of our audience. Like I said, we hope to have the recording of this out sometime, hopefully within next week, technology permitting. Staff will have this on NeoGov Learn, hopefully around that time as well. And if at any point you have questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, anything that has to do with sustainability at the county, I'm going to go ahead and put our email in the chat. You can also find it on the county website. That's just sustainability@washingtoncountyor.gov. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you around next time.
Thanks, everyone.